Hey friends, Stephanie Redfeather, and I am so happy to be chatting with my soul brother, Daniel Moeller. Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, it's awesome to be here.
So Daniel is a cool man. He is a fellow author. He wrote Shamanic Kabbalah, which came out a couple of years ago. He's got a new book coming out in May that's called, I had to write the title down, The Shamanic Soul, a guidebook for self-exploration, healing, and mysticism. I've read it. He asked me to provide an endorsement. And so it's a spectacular book. So that comes out in May. He is also just an incredible artist, a cartoonist, if you will. He does the artwork, the writing, the whole spiel from beginning to end of graphic novels and comics. He is a sanctioned teacher in the Pachacuti Mesa tradition of Peru, which is the shamanic tradition that both of us practice. And he wrote the foreword for my Oracle deck. And so I wanted to have him on to just, because you're going to expect me to say, hey, my deck's really cool and you should buy it. But I would like for somebody else to say, hey, her deck's really cool and you should buy it. So
It is really cool. You should buy it.
He's not getting paid, by the way.
Not a dime.
But I do want to highlight that forewords are a common occurrence in books, but they're pretty rare in Oracle decks. And so I wanted it, honestly, I wanted a foreword to alert people that, there's something about this that sets it apart from other Oracle decks. And so because Daniel did the foreword, he was the first person to look at all of the artwork, to dive in, to read the messages. And so Daniel, what was your experience?
It was an amazing experience. It took me a little bit by surprise because the way I normally like to break in an Oracle deck, as it were, to get to know it is to just maybe pull a card a day and use that card as a reflection. Really, even before I started diving into your material. And reading the activations and all that, which I totally had to get into because as I started with even the very first card, I knew this wasn't just going to be a daily occurrence. It was something that I really had to sit with and really allow to kind of mix inside of me and percolate and absorb in some time to process, because the messages in the even in the cards themselves, let alone the activations supplements that you wrote in the book, have a lot to say. They contain a lot of information. So I realized very quickly, I'm going to have to take even more time with this than I realized. And then I had to be really gentle with myself, even though I felt pressured by getting, you a written forward, but also knew I'm going to have to take my time. I'm just getting however long this takes. And, not, sometimes a card, sat with me for a few days, sometimes a week, and just kind of allowed that to, grow naturally. So it was really quite a different experience for me. And I think it was just mostly because of, the power of the images that are on the deck that you brought forward have a sort of archetypal sincerity to them. And by that, I mean, there is a level of information, it feels like, that they're in the cosmos. And there are many people that talk about this, like Angela Sarin, the psychologist, Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, among others, about this kind of archetypal framework where this place of ideas that it kind of lives in the primary consciousness of the world soul. And there are some images in the world that people just naturally resonate with. That's why we resonate a lot with a lot of ancient imagery and sacred imagery of, in ancient temples in Egypt and Peru and Northern Native American imagery, because they all have kind of like this, that they tap into that sort of archetypal framework very easily for people. And part of it's because there's like a minimalist or minimalism to that, a simplicity. And I don't mean that in any kind of downward sense. It's actually very important because it allows most humans to kind of tap into that energy, whereas the more detailed and succinct an image is, you begin to kind of isolate through differentiation. So that's one thing I really appreciated about the cards, is that they tapped into that that sort of symbolic ancestry that you see in other images across the planet, but doesn't represent it directly. It's its own thing, you know?
Wow, thank you. You're so cerebral. I love the way your mind works, and and it's meaningful to me, as I know you know too, because I know what stands out for me on the deck, but to hear what stands out for somebody else gives me an entirely new perspective, and I know that's going to be helpful to people that are considering getting this. Were there any sorry to put you on the spot, like, was there a favorite card, a favorite image, a favorite just thing about the deck for you?
Mm-hmm. I actually wrote that down because I wanted to tell you what my favorite card was. I actually had a few favorites. Scepter of Consciousness was a biggie, card number 30. But the one I always keep going back to is Night Shift, number 16.
Mm,
Um, because I mean, you and I both have been involved in a lot of ceremonial processes. We've read a lot of books on ceremony, ritual, and, self-help, spiritual, progress and evolution in people's lives. But that book, that card, I apologize, invites a pause to everything. It invites you to really sit and honor your dream time, to honor your rest, and allowing the night to come. And at least this is how the card felt to me. But the rituals of that accompany that particular card too, really beg the reader to honor your, whenever you're going to bed, to honor that sleep, to ritualize it in some form, as a way of kind of inviting, you know, um, more of it, in the sense of like a higher quality of rest. And because, and we still even work whenever we sleep too, right? There's still a part of us that's active, and I understand that too. And that's interesting because I do a lot of my ceremony at night anyway.
mhm.
But so that card just really drew me, not just because of the visuals are outstanding, and that's one of those cards I definitely want to get a print of. Yeah,
This is Night Shift that he's
I,
talking about.
I would like that hanging in my lodge someday.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, as well as Scepter of Consciousness too, but which really spoke to me as well. That one, I very attuned to the caduceus. My wife and I use that symbol actually as a symbol for our marriage.
Mm,
So we are always going back to that symbol as a way to bring harmony into our marriage.
yeah.
So that meant a lot to me whenever it first came up, but also it's got so much history behind it, the ancient mystery schools and Hermes, the thrice great, as a primary symbol of magic and spiritual power. So it's such a wonderful execution of it, in the way that you created it. So awesome, awesome, awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. So Oracle decks are really big. I have probably 25 to 30 decks. I use them all the time. And so there might be people going, do I really need another deck? Why do I need this deck? And so what would you say to them?
I would say yes, you do. But the main reason why I would say that is because I have a lot of Oracle decks too. I think you and I are similar, and we collect them and we love them. But this one immediately impacted me personally as a tool of initiation, and ceremony as well. I have a lot of Oracle decks that are like, yeah, they're pretty, but there wasn't this level of evolutionary activation that came with them. There's a process that you lay out in the book for readers as well that kind of brings you through a sort of initiatory path. And I don't know if that's the right word that you would use for it, but definitely it is felt. And I think I remember telling you whenever I was first looking at them, it seems like these images belong hanging up in a temple in the mystery schools of old as initiatory pathways for the individuals to go through rites of passage and to ascend higher levels of consciousness. They are powerful, powerful tools. It's more than an oracle deck. It is a ritual and ceremonial tool. And yeah, I know I got to be one of the first to start working with them, but it was mostly through, a digital format. I can't wait to have my own copy in hand as well, because, and my wife as well, because we're so looking forward to incorporating them into our ritual and ceremonial space.
Thank you for that. And just to expand on what Daniel's referring to, I created this deck not only to be used like a traditional oracle deck, but it could be a self-guided initiation into the mysteries of higher consciousness. So you can actually take this guidebook and read it from start to finish. And it's broken into 4 initiatory paths of 11 cards each that take you higher in frequency and broader in perspective. And so I appreciate that came across, so.
Yeah, it's one of the first things that really hit me about it too. So I think it's very clear in the message that was delivered through you, from the universe through you and into these cards. And they definitely have a life of their own. They definitely have a consciousness in their own right. And that's when you've seen either an oracle or a tarot deck that has power that you want to be able to have a relationship with, when it has that consciousness itself. It's moving through it for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I don't mean this to sound all egotistical or whatever, but you guys, when I got this book, the deck, and opened it, I was like speechless. I was so blown away by the power of it. And I was like, Spirit, am I being, like, am I just getting, too big for my britches? And they're like, no, listen, you were our hands. You were our voice. You were the channel. The information is coming from a higher place. You were the messenger. So it's okay that you can get affected by the power of it. So I was like, okay, good. Because I was, you just, sometimes you lose perspective when you get excited and wrapped up in the energy of a thing. So
Yeah, I don't think that's egotistical at all. That kind of shows your humility of being like a clear channel and a clear vessel. And that's one thing I've always appreciated. Just even I've had the benefit of working with you directly, and but it's also felt in your book as well and in the Oracle deck. And I mean Evolutionary Empath, the book, as well as this deck. So yeah, own it, girl.
all right, we're good. All right, so final question. Is there anything else that you want to share with my peeps about your experience with this deck?
A lot of decks offer spreads. Yours offers some spreads to use as well. Just suggested spreads. And the one that I really enjoyed, because I usually like working in threes, is the You, Me, Us spread. Really enjoyed that. Not only just in a way to like have relationship with like my wife, so to speak, but just with other people and situations. I usually like working in threes when it comes to Oracle decks and Tarot anyway, but the way that you laid that spread out really spoke to me, and I've started incorporating it into my own practice. So it was really helpful. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, well, Daniel, I so appreciate you taking the time and having this chat. I miss you, giving you an autumn, a big hug. Thank you so much, my brother.
Yeah, thank you, sister. Love you.
Love you too.